Hello everyone, how are you? Hope you're well. Hope you are enjoying your I wanted to say summer holidays, but I realized that not everybody who watches this lives somewhere where there's summer. But for those of us in the Western Hemisphere, I hope you're enjoying your summer. For those of us in the UK, please do take advantage of those sunny days, because you know that our sunny days are like very far and in between. Anyway, hope you're well, hope you're enjoying yourselves. Thank you all so much for the feedback that you gave me last week regarding the tips I gave on reading. I'm glad most of you found them useful. I know that it would have been great to have that kind of encouragement when I wanted to go back into reading, so I'm glad it really helped, and I hope that for most of you who said it, you haven't overthought it and just picked up a book and started reading. I think sometimes it's just that, just pick up a book and start reading. Sometimes we make it so complicated. We make what isn't necessarily a complicated thing to a really complicated thing. Pick up what you enjoy and start reading. So today I am going to be talking about a book called Born a Crime by Trevor Noah. So if you are quite conversant with the news cycle, you would probably know who Trevor Noah is. Trevor Noah is a comedian, and he is the anchor. Is anchor the word? Yeah, anchor of Today Show. Like formerly used to be anchored by Jay Leno, but it's now anchored by Trevor Noah. And if you follow my page for a while, you know that I have a soft spot for Trevor. You know, I like, even though a lot of people joke and say, "Oh, you're too serious." My mom especially, she was like, "When you're too serious," I was like, I really do think I have a sense of humor, and I love humor. I love people who don't take themselves too seriously. One of my bywords, or what is in bywords, one of the things I really admire about people is I really admire people who take life seriously but don't take themselves too seriously. And so Trevor Noah is one of those people. He's a comedian, he's a news anchor, and he's someone I really admire. So when I found out that he had an autobiographical account of his life growing up in South Africa, he's a South African, I was like, oh, I'll have to read this. And I've had a lot of brilliant reviews about the book, so I was like, yeah, I definitely have to read it. I have to buy it. I have to read it. So I'm going to read a few page like I normally do from the book, and then I'll talk about my thoughts about what I read and also my thoughts about the book generally. So I'm reading from I don't know what page this is, but it's the start of chapter 4. It has, in the book, it has some places where he just has like a monologue. Would I call that a monologue? But yeah, you know what I mean. So I'm going to read one of that, and that's shortly before you get to chapter 4. When I was growing up, we used to get American TV shows rebroadcast on our stations. Doogie Howser, MD, Murder, She Wrote, Rescue 911 with William Shatner. Most of them were dubbed into African languages. ALF was in Afrikaans, Transformers was in Soto, but if you wanted to watch them in English, the original American audio would be simulcast on the radio. You could mute your TV and listen to that. Watching those shows, I realized that whenever black people were on screen speaking in African languages, they felt familiar to me. They sounded like they were supposed to sound. Then I'd listen to them in simulcast on the radio, and they would all have black American accents. My perception of them changed. They didn't feel familiar. They felt like foreigners. Language brings with it an identity and a culture, or at least the perception of it. A shared language says we are the same. A language barrier says we're different. The architects of apartheid understood this. Part of the effort to divide black people was to make sure that we were separated not just physically but by language as well. In the Bantu schools, children were only taught in their home language. Zulu kids taught in Zulu. Swana kids taught in Swana. Because of this, we'd fall into the trap the government had set for us and fight among ourselves, believing that we were different. The great thing about language is that you can easily just as use it to do the opposite. Convince people that they are the same. Racism teaches us that we are different because of the color of our skin. But because racism is stupid, it's easily tricked. If you're racist and you meet someone who doesn't look like you, the fact that he can't speak like you reinforces your racist preconceptions. It's different, less intelligent. A brilliant scientist can come over from the border of Mexico to live in America. But if he speaks in broken English, people say, hey, I don't trust this guy. But he's a scientist. In Mexican science, maybe, I don't trust him. However, if the person who doesn't look like you speaks like you, your brain short circuits because your racism program has none of those instructions in the code. Wait, your mind says, but the racism code says if he doesn't look like me, he isn't like me. But the language code says if he speaks like me, is like me, something is off here. I can't figure this out. So here he was talking about how you know, he talked a lot about racism and apartheid in South Africa, because obviously he grew up in South Africa as the child of a black South African woman and a Swiss father. And the book really goes into a lot of intricacies and a lot of the issues that apartheid and the issues of race were in South Africa. But that particular part about language was something that really struck me, because I know that language is something that transcends barriers. So even though you have some of those things where people think about a person and they look different from them, if they then speak in a certain way, you then begin to go over that barrier of, oh, that person is other. You know, I remember when I first of all started living in the UK, and I started working in a corporate environment, and people would, you know, I would be speaking to people who would have grown a relationship, and we would have started talking and kind of grown a relationship, and then maybe after some time we would have talked, and then they were like, oh, I didn't know, you know, and then I say something about, oh, maybe when I was growing up in Nigeria, and then I would sometimes see the surprise faces to say, oh, Dami, when did you move to the UK? And then when I told them, I think sometimes then it was quite early, because I moved to the UK about 12 years ago, as in permanently to live in the UK, and they'd be shocked. Really, you weren't born here? I was like, no, I wasn't even raised here. I was raised in Nigeria. And it always used to be shocking to them, because obviously they would think, oh, but you speak so well. I don't know, do I speak well? Anyway, but you know what I mean. And that kind of transcended things, because then a lot of times they didn't see me as different, or they didn't see me as black. They just saw me as someone who they'd gotten to know. So it is very, very interesting. There are a lot of concepts. It is quite, disclaimer here, there are quite a number of expertise in there, but if you can ignore that, overall I think it's a very good book. I think it's one I'd highly recommend. I personally, as I said last week, I love reading biographies, autobiographies. As I said, I love stories. I love people's stories. I love the stories of people's lives. I love people's experiences, because I generally believe that our experiences, the way, all of the various things that contribute into we becoming the people that we are. And so our experiences, our stories, our childhood, how we grew up, all those things make up who we are. And seeing Trevor on TV now, reading this book, I kind of have an affinity with him, and I can understand the trajectory and the journey that he's been on. So Trevor Noah's Born a Crime, very good book, highly recommend. Do let me know if you've read it in the comments, and if you haven't, let me know if I've convinced you to read it. Thank you very much again for watching, and have a lovely, lovely week ahead. Bye.